false promise of better living. You can't just tell somebody, some victim, that you come with me, I'm taking you, you'll go to Thailand and all. They're given some kind of allurement, they're given some kind of a promise of job, promise of better prospects of the family. They identify family on the basis of the socio-economic status, the vulnerability of the family. Then the victim is trafficked, victim reaches place of delivery, kept in transit place, negotiation takes place, and then finally she is delivered at a particular brothel house. Now, agencies, some of the agencies which are involved in this whole, I think, issue is even law enforcement agency is a very critical agency. It's a very critical stakeholder. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs play a very important role. Civil society, health agencies, doctors, central paramilitary forces when they're deployed on the border, and border controlling agencies. Now, interventions. I think this is something which is very important, and where the Delhi rescue example had some very positive things. When a victim is trafficked, in the ITP Act, there used to be a provision under which a victim, if she's soliciting in the public, she used to be penalized. So you are actually, the victim herself becomes a criminal. There was no attempt also to ensure that how she has come into this profession, why she is doing this, who are the people who are responsible for this kind of a plight for that particular victim. So I never use a word sex worker, I use the word victim. They are not sex workers, they are all victims of crime, they are victims of kidnapping, victims. So this was a first attitudinal or paradigm shift in the strategy of the law enforcement agencies, that they have to be treated as victims. We also registered a lot of cases, criminal cases, on the statement of the victims, which is not very easy. Let me tell you, because of my acquaintance with one or two other regional languages, I was able to communicate with them in their language in the rescue home. I'll talk to them. To extract information from them about the trafficker it's very difficult task. You have to ensure them, you have to give them confidence. So I think that is what was a very difficult task, when after rescue operations I'll go and I'll talk to them and know why, how they have landed school. We had registered at least more than 75 criminal cases. And some of these criminal cases, in the ITP Act, there used to be a provision also for a sealing of a quota. And I have no hesitation, and I say this with a lot of pride, that when we started getting cases registered in one of the convictions, the brothel house was sealed also. And at that point of time, this was the first case in Asia where on a premises was sealed. We had to educate many people about it. Because of the paucity of time, I'll stop here. But before that, the lessons which we learned from the mass rescue operation was that rescue is definitely an important thing. But more than rescue, the rehabilitation and reintegration of those victims is another very important thing. Let's also understand that for a victim being rescued from a brothel house, it is also an economic displacement. She has been living on some kinds of earning against her wishes, and it's a vicious trap in which she cannot come out. She really doesn't know she has been bought by somebody, and she has to pay the money, then only she'll come out. So our rehabilitative and reintegrative strategy also has to be meaningful. We have to ensure that we have such a system And that is where the role of police ends. That is where the role of civil society, the government, and other organizations come in providing a meaningful package for reintegration and of all these victims also. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry that I took some more time.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Now, can we please have Professor Shameen Reza as our next speaker? Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, my very esteemed and respected colleagues and the panelists here. The good thing is that I took some notes yesterday and I cannot figure out what I wrote yesterday. So yeah, that's one good part. And the second one is that my laptop charger is not working. So I couldn't make any structured presentation. That's good for me, so that I could listen to my colleagues. Before talking about it, I refer to my good friend Dev Patek, who spoke yesterday, that when you're talking about the actors, agencies, and interventions, we must take into consideration the overlappings in our discussions, the disruptions, the confusions, consistencies, inconsistencies, all our historical experiences, whatever thing happened in the past, what is happening in the contemporary period, and what is emerging before us every day in relation to technology behavior, our media behavior, our own attitude. And we cannot understand these. I mean, when you talk about the understanding children or defining the age of a child or understanding child culture, who is a child? I mean, all these questions without understanding our class system, our social structure, our political structure, even the global politics in which we live in. Many of our discussion yesterday talked about UNCRC. United States didn't sign. It's not a signatory to UNCRC, United Nations Child Rights Convention. And we are very critical of the West. I mean, there are reasons to be critical about them. But at the same time, we must also realize that the countries that didn't sign the documents like UNCRC also have their past and struggle in understanding the life of a child, defining child, like in the United States, other than the government, other than the politics. There are indigenous definitions, there are indigenous issues, there are local issues, there are folk issues. And countries like ours in South Asia, they are more than enthusiastic to sign the optional protocols even. And the optional protocols involve issues like, the forced labor, child prostitution, and even, the sending to war for the child soldier. So we are expert in signing. We love to sign the international documents. We also ratify very quickly. But just the last speaker said, the child prostitution, for example, is an issue that we should take seriously. Currently, we say in South Asia, we don't have this kind of child soldier, but in other countries, they do have. So my understanding of this thing will start with the Bengali poet Sukanto's famous poem called 18 Years. If there are Bengali people here who would understand, 18 bochor. And he said, it's so terrible. You cannot take it. You are 18 now. And you want to do something impossible. The age itself is impossible. And we are not obedient to anyone, to any structure, to any system. That's how the left-oriented poet Sukanto imagined 18 years and tried to imagine youth, the forces of youth. Now, the actors and agencies, let's divide this into two. Yesterday, some of the speakers were talking about the action research done by NGOs and the limits or some of the limitations of the academic research on children and media, or on children and culture, or defining childhood. I'm into the business of media and communication. I teach media and communication. The very first study that took place in the media and communication or in mass communication tradition was the impact of motion films on children in the United States, called pain fund studies. There are a series of studies. So we can be very critical about the Western framework, the way they look at the child or the culture or the childhood. But they started the first research with children or for children, if not by the children. And then the famous study done by Wilbur Schramm, the television in the lives of our children, is a groundbreaking work. It took 10 years to conduct the study, to finalize the study, and to publish the study. Now, I think we can, divide this. We can draw the line of demarcation that what is an academic study on this topic or on this area and what is an action research. But if I do divide that into NGO or the civil society or the UN-led or the government-led studies, what are the general perception about the agencies of the child? Now, I think they're vulnerable. They cannot do anything themselves. They're helpless. They need help. They cannot take their own decision. We need the support. We need moral policing. We need to guide them in using internet, the guide watching television, watching film, even access to pornography, many other stuff. But at the same time, in the academia, we are talking about, say, child is a human capital, child is an investment, child is an anthropological subject, child is a cultural subject, child is an historical issues. I think I don't see any problem in dividing issues. I don't see there would be overlapping, there would be contradictions, but we have to decide what are the agencies and what are the key issues and what are the key actors. The child himself or herself is an actor, and then NGOs, and then academia, then you, me, the histories, the international politics, the global players. Everybody plays their own role in defining them, in using them, and putting them into context. In one of the conferences some days back, one of the participants asked me on children in South Asia, that have you studied the child in particular in our like in 1947 studies? The India, when India was divided, we see children in the photographs, in the films, in the documentaries. But have you studied the child in our partition studies? I said, possibly we haven't done that. So the interventions that I would support in this case, or I propose, is say, let's talk about input. We need input both from the academia and also from the activists, also from the civil society, also from the NGOs, also from the law enforcing agencies, like the last speaker said. Then we talk about in South Asia, like methodology. We need some kind of methodology to study the child and the child culture. Whether it's a Western framework, if you want to develop our own framework. Working with children is not an easy thing. It's a special kind of approach to work with children. If you work for the children, that's fine. But if it is by children, if it is with the children, you need special kind of methodology, techniques and approaches to do that. And every time it cannot be top down, that we'll be talking about them. They are the victim of this structure, the process, brutality, our social structure or politics. But also you must understand their perception. You must take into account their perception. In relation to, say, for example, the cross-cultural approach, we need lots of cross-cultural approach. South Asia is not an unitary whole. I mean, when you are talking here, South Asia has got diversity. The diversity within India, the diversity in neighboring country, in Bangladesh, in Nepal. If this conference would held in Nepal, we'd have discussed in a very different way. The children issues in Nepal are very different. I started my career with one of the international, NGO working with children. So I was very much biased with UNCRC, protection, provision, participation, and all these things. And after so many years, I think, well, that's fine. We encourage the children's participation in development, in media, and everywhere. But if it is all about working with children and understanding the child culture in South Asia, then we need to talk about the policy interventions. How do you do the policy interventions? And of course, there are lots of other cultural approaches. But since I'm in academia, I would say I think the anthropologists should focus more on this issue. The sociologists should do more about understanding the child culture in South Asia and the issues. The communication part should work about it, not only the impact study, not only the cultural studies, not only the whatever thing is being put forward in these days by the commercial incentives or by the Western publishers, but should develop our own agenda, our own structure. finally, I would say, let's consider our histories, our bad experiences, our good experiences, our own structure, the structure that we imagine, our wars, our conflicts. Without understanding the life of a child, you cannot understand conflict. But all we have done in South Asia, we tried to understand conflicts, our histories, our partitions, our wars without children, as if they didn't exist. They're just numbers. These many children died because of 1971 war. These many children were sufferers because of 1947 partition, but didn't understand them culturally, historically, politically, socially. They're not an economic being only. But of course, this is important. If you talk about policy studies, all the people sitting around and listening to us cannot ignore that you need to put them into context. You need the policy approaches in order to fight child prostitution, trafficking. I mean, you cannot say all these cultural good words, but the culture, the borders, cross-border, or understanding imagination is equally important. So I don't see any big differences between the action researches done by NGOs, INGOs, government, and all those good people, and what we imagine here, what we try to understand here, and the way we conceptualize, the way we construct the child, and try to understand the childhood. I think I'll need to finish. I'll again finish by referring to Rabindranath Tagore's autobiography or the childhood memoir called Chelebela, Childhood. And he was writing this memoir when he was 70. And going back, like 70 years past in the old Calcutta in the colonial days. But when he's finishing the book, I mean, when the book finishes and he's narrating his life story, he almost became 25 years. And Tagore is narrating, well, I started talking about when I was born, the old Calcutta, the family, but I didn't realize that when I'm finishing, I'm 25. Now, yesterday, we all struggled defining the child. Is he, by definition, by ILO? Like India and China negotiates with the age because they have farming, they have agriculture, so they don't always listen to ILO definition. UNCRC, okay, 18. All the South Asian governments, okay, 18. Marriages, 20, 21, blah, blah. There are lots of discussions, even back home. But if you take Tagore again, why did he finish writing his Chelebela at the age of 25 then? I mean, he could have finished it like at 15, at 20. He experienced death in his family, separation, relationship, his understanding of sexuality, his understanding of culture, his relationship with other seniors, other juniors, the women folks, the men folks, the lots of other stakeholders who came to Jorasako Thakurbari, the politics, the society, the English culture, even there are very little things in his life. His relationship with his brother's wife, for example, very, kind of controversial, very talk about issues in Tagore's life. So 1 to 25, how to define the age of a child? I mean, it lives, it goes on. It goes on with death, with conflicts, with confusion, with disruptions, with overlapping, everything. So actually, our decision, it's actually our culture, it's actually our South Asian past and histories that will inform and shape whatever policies we're going to take about or the interventions that are going to take about, doing better for the children and for a better South Asia, of course. And I think the policy intervention, the academic work, the NGO work, our understanding, our empirical work, our action researches, everything will come together along with our ethnographic, historical, anthropological, cultural, even fine arts. When I'm finishing, I'm standing in Delhi and in India, which has got one of the finest film industries, the biggest film industry, the successful film industries in the world. But how many studies have you seen that initiated by Mumbai film industry, by Bollywood, to look at its relevance to children, not impact, the way children accept it, the way children understands it, and the way it can be put into, can be translated into our policy initiatives. With this, I'll finish. Thank you so much.
Placing the child right in the center. Your actors, they have agency. Thank you for those words. Next speaker is Dr. Antaryami Das. Please come to the stage.
So thank you everyone, and thank you chairperson for inviting me. So I would bring the perspective from a medical health and a public health lens, because I'm a medical person, I'm a public health expert, I'm a nutrition expert. So I would look into the child interventions and the child rights issue from that lens. Uh, so we all say that children are our future, isn't it? That's many of time you have read it, you have used it probably. Children are our future. I agree that they are our future, but we tend to miss out the fact that they are also the present. They are here. And if you look at the context, how these children are doing in terms of their human developmental capacity, you will be surprised to see that in the world, Asia is the number one continent, and India is, of course, the number one country within Asia in all the deprivation. You talk about child mortality, you talk about child malnutrition, you talk about poor nutrition. In all these indicators, we are not faring well. Say, for example, every third child in this continent is malnourished, is stunted. Stunted means it is not only stunted for the height and for the anthropometry, it is actually stunted for the human capacity, stunted in their cognitive capacity, stunted in their economic capacity. So that's how stunting is. That's how bad it is. Now, 32 children out of every 1,000 live birth will not be able to see their fifth birthday. They will die before 5 years. And that's the reality in this continent. Only 10% of children, that is, only one in every 10 child, will have a minimum acceptable diet. Can you imagine? Minimum acceptable diet. The definition itself is very derogatory. This is the minimum acceptable you have to have, and that only 10% of children will have that minimum acceptable diet. So all these things is compounding and is depriving children's capacity, and hence this social and the economic capability of a country, of a nation. I would put it into a perspective that Save the Children or the Bal Raksha Bharat, the organization I belong to, we have devised a plan and an intervention framework that will look into the holistic child care development and the implementation at a countrywide level. So the holistic aspect of a child care development doesn't only speak about you just do this and you don't deal with the others. Now, with the previous two speakers, we heard about the safety, the security, and all other aspect. So how do we ensure that a child gets the interventions around health, nutrition, education, child protection, safety, parenting, caregiving at a time? So that's the beauty of this organization. That's a multi-thematic organization, and we believe that every government has the capacity to provide all these interventions, because you eventually see that there is a nodal department, there is a ministry, and there are so many social interventions are happening. But the issue with not only in India, but in most of the South Asian country, if you look at the coverage of these government interventions and the services, they are suffering from it's a new Einstein equation. They are suffering from C square IQ. I call it a double C IQ. So all these interventions are suffering from very poor coverage, continuity, intensity, and quality. So I agree. We have ICDS. That's the world's largest program talking about child nutrition and education. I agree that there is a Poshan Abhiyan, there is a nutrition, and there are a lot of things are happening. But how does it make sense if it is not covering all child? And how does it make sense if it is not continued throughout the year in 365 days, and it is just a campaign happening in, August first week, breastfeeding week, and then you forget. That's not going to happen. And, no, how is it if you don't have the interventions with the optimal, bandwidth and the quality, right? So government is, doing a lot, and the academia and the civil society, they can partner together to find ways how to improve the coverage, continuity, intensity, and quality of all these interventions is also important. Then I would put another, framework into this picture. Everybody, you must have heard about early childhood development, ECD. That's a very interesting thing. ECD is a, it's not only cost effective, it's also a child's right, right? Every child has the fundamental right to have all these essential interventions being provided by the duty bearer, by the government, because the child cannot deal with all these things by himself or herself. So there is a duty, there is a responsibility by the care provider, by the service provider, to make things happen around the child, right? So if that is the framework, then WHO has come up with a, very interesting, framework to improve the early childhood development. It's called a nurturing care framework. And the nurturing care framework is, both the speaker, mentioned about it. You will find a mention, in that nurturing care framework. The first one is a, providing good health to the child. The second one is providing adequate nutrition to the child. The third one is providing a responsive care giving to the child. And the fourth one is providing safety and security to the child, right? And the fifth one is providing an opportunity for the early learning. So if we provide the early learning, the safety, security, the good nutrition and the health and the nurturing caregiving, then only the child will thrive. Then only the, children will have the optimal developmental potential. Now, if you look at our policy programs and our interventions in all these countries in South Asia, you will see there is a huge gap in terms of fulfilling the, requirement. Now, lastly, I will bring another data point. You will be surprised to see that there are so many SDG indicators. There is one indicator around children who are developmentally on track. So the definition, name itself is children who are developmentally on track, SDG number 4.2.2. If you look at the SDG dashboard and the SDG site, you will see that there are all countries who are reporting to that indicator. Maybe the percentage is less, maybe they are off tracking, they are not meeting the SDG target. But you will be surprised to see that this indicator is missing for India. As simple as that. India is not reporting to this indicator. So you will see there is blank data, no report. Now, how is this happening? Are we not providing nutritional interventions? Are we not giving health interventions? Are there no early learning interventions? Everything is happening. But how come there is no reporting to the proportion of children who are developmentally on track? This is how I request the academia, the you know uh, research community and the civil society to come up with a simple doable indicator that can be measured. And it's not difficult. It's just that we have to make a proof of concept. You do it at a small scale and then you propose the ministry, maybe WCD, who is the nodal for childhood development, can take it up. So this kind of indicator being missed out of the radar is not a good sign. And I would encourage all of you to think about it, right? If we don't monitor, most likely we will miss out the progress. Now, I don't know if I captured the thoughts in a right direction, because I'm not from an academic background. I'm a practitioner, and I look at child rights and development from a different lens. And the lens I used here is a public health, nutrition, early childhood development. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take it. That's why I'm saving my 3 minutes for any questions if you ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dash. Next speaker is Professor Ravindran Gopal.
morning, everyone in the hall, delegates on the dais, and my dear colleague and friend Dave Pathak for this opportunity, and my dear colleague and friend Biswajit Das, whom I am missing a lot for the past 2 days. The sessions would have had a different kind of spirit with his presence. Unfortunately, he could not be present. Very briefly, I have few thoughts to share with you on the key terms of the theme. The two important key terms are, one is childhood, another is culture. English is a problematic language, and it doesn't capture the essence of what we experience in our everyday life as culture within quote. The idea of culture last 200, 300 years comes to us from a very entrenched colonial apparatus, particularly in the academia. And despite our willingness to shake this off, some of us, including myself, we are learning and we are getting new insights thanks to those who have been causing certain resistance within those countries which colonized us. And in this context, how to get away from something which is essentially problematic, such as childhood cultures. Is it not an ambitious key term? Or is it not an impossible framework, considering the fact that defining something would make us a prisoner of that something, that framework? So that gets us a singular lens. And defining a child has always been problematic, both in the West and the East. Philosophers struggle or struggling. If we consider philosophy as a very meaningful site of getting us some answers, and those who have leveraged cultural studies, they also struggle, but some succeeded. One person who succeeded enormously, and one who can provide us with an alternative perspective on not only childhood cultures, but cultures in general, in my opinion, is Remo Williams, who got us the term. After weighing the pros and cons of other definitions of culture, he finally says beautifully, culture is ordinary. So with these three words, he demolished the entire anthropological trajectories of culture. So that's the beauty of his way of looking at culture. Yesterday also one presenter, Kanika Day, I think, she referred to another French sociologist, Henri Lefort, who said again beautifully that man is nothing without everyday life. So whatever we mean by culture is residing in our everyday life. So in this context, by extending these two notions, a childhood culture resides in the everyday life of the child. And the everyday life of the child, if you are using a Marxist perspective, it is a site of production. It becomes, because it is a site of production, a problematic site as well for both the other members of the society, family, etc. In this context, we all know that children are children because of their potential to imagine. One key difference between children and adults in all cultures is they have this madness, according to Foucault, in his famous work Birth of the Prison. In one random paragraph, he defines madness with reference to children. He says, surprisingly, madness is children in a positive sense. Children are endowed with so much energy and strength, and that borders on madness. And that energy and strength also belongs to adults, the prisoners, who can who need to be disciplined. So, from an adult perspective, Foucault is right that we want to discipline children. Somebody should do a study on how in India and in Asian cultures we have a strong regimentation of disciplinary procedures with regard to children. Asian children in the imageries of social media are different from American children and European children. So we are given the impression, whether the child comes from Japan, China, or India, or Bangladesh, we are given the impression that the Asian child is well regimented or disciplined. That is, of course, subject to speculation. The second problematic with the key term culture is we have started using it as a one-fits-all category, like our shirts and dresses. And we have, over a period of time, following the Western scholars, started working on categories such as babyhood and the stage of infancy, adulthood, adolescence, etc. When the logic of writing constitution emerged in the world, the cultural notions of lawmaking suffered a great defeat, including Indian constitution. We started borrowing liberally across the world. So likewise, in the case of defining cultures of childhood, we have started borrowing imported categories. Even though there is a very rich body of treasure in every region of India, in every language, we are yet to tap philosophies on childhood in India. Of course, I'm learning about the classical literature in Tamil Nadu and trying to work with the categories given in the past. And my presentation will be looking at it. Quickly, as the time is short, child is an object of desire across the world. And we have a problem here because in the East and West, this object of desire becomes a dependent object. And in Freudian psychoanalysis, this was brought out well. Another reading of Freudian psychoanalysis is the child has to be a dependent object of desire, dependent on either the father figure or mother figure. And we are brainwashed with this Oedipal complex syndrome by Freud. I would have appreciated Freud if he had used the term dependency. Okay, so Freud is known for making his stories controversial deliberately and appealing. In Asia, particularly India and China, child is a gift of nature. And child is also an object of wealth. Even today in 2023, when a child is born in China, the child is seen as a future billionaire or millionaire. A child is not a child for a Chinese parent. The child is given a small red hamper, given the money, blessed to make more money. So child is a capitalistic object of desire in the case of China. For other cultures in Asia, child is a symbol of fertility, a different kind of wealth, where the child is linked with the wealth of the past ancestors and the future offsprings who are yet to be born. So the child becomes more like a bridge between the past wealth of the family and the future wealth of the family. Now, finally, uh, um, the reminders have come. Finally, what is there for us in media studies or mass communication studies? How to go about it in the age of social media? I had a friend by name Grand Nobel who was a social psychologist. He died during early 90s. And when he visited during late 80s, he told about his first book and also said that he didn't have a copy. This first book was published by the earlier version of Sage. Sage then was known as Constable in London. This was a publisher's name. I think in 1975, Grand Nobel's or the first major work on children and media was published as Children in Front of Television. This was the title of Grand Nobel's work in 1975, published by a publisher called Constable. Very difficult to get unless you go to London and get the hard copy. So what we can learn from here, um, in the age of social media, we can't say children in front of Facebook or Instagram. We can't have a book title such as. We never had as Professor Shamim was telling us, why in India we don't link films with the childhood cultures. So there is a huge gap in our focus on the influence of films. We are more into studying social media. We are not into studying other conventional media, which still have a huge influence on us. So these catchwords, when they become key terms in our title, they will become problematic for our research. There is a lot we can engage with this. It's a big opportunity given by Professor Dev Padak, supported by Jamiahamdard, and at least if those of us in this hall take the message of the conference, the challenges it poses, each of us can address one challenge. And probably in the next 5 years, South Asia will have a rich body of literature on childhood cultures. Thank you for your patience. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gopalan. Now, for the last speaker, we have Professor Farhad Bashir Khan. Please.
Good morning, everyone, and thankful for the chair and the conference to give me space here to talk you about something which is very near to my heart. I have been a media practitioner, photographer, filmmaker. I also specialize on political communication and how visual politics works in India and across the world. Now so I would start with something which is going to come in future, and which is when lot of things would become visible in internet, including uh, we are getting into iconography. Instead of writing, we started those icons, we click that, and now lot more visual perspective would be part of our communication as those early days sign language. Photographs are increasingly becoming icons to tell things, to tell a larger story. Uh, Digital or electronic media came late in India, so I will be forced to be quoting from some Western examples. Uh, they say that you can stop a war, you can start a war with photos. You must have heard all that. Start with the I'll start with 1964 campaign, a US presidential campaign by Lyndon Johnson. If people who are younger don't, if they can search for it. So he, this candidate for political, for US president, he started his campaign by the campaign which is called Daisy Girl, where there is a daisy, there is a girl with a daisy flower, with a small little flower, and she's plucking out those leaves, and in the background she's saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in the background there is it start, the countdown starts, and then there is a nuclear explosion, and then this girl and everything vanishes. And of course, this was a powerful campaign, of course, pulled out from the national media quickly because of its content, but then it earned lot of private channel and featured and all. I look at, you look at for instance, 2008 and 12 Obama major campaign, where children were singing or repeating what about his speech. Then look at Nick Uti's photograph, which is a little earlier, which is Nepal girl photo, where this girl is burning girl is running a victim of napalm bomb, and that created a lot of sympathy, and US has to pull out from. So a lot of those example we see, and we are using children imagery increasingly. Any big sympathy you need to have, it could be Rohingya or it could be anything. We iconize uh, children because of their innocence and all, and start using them. What we are lagging behind is this teaching teaching these children to have their own stories. When I say teaching story, of course, a lot of effort have been in from the days of DSLR cameras, and the cameras were very complicated. We used to teach street children or other children, not less privileged, to how to document their life. Now with now there are two more influence which our young generation is influenced. One is media, which they consume, and which talk about how to behave like a certain film star or a certain actor in a show. Then there is another influence, which is put yourself looking differently on Instagram or whatever post. So I'm cutting this short, and so in the newer age, instead of teaching them DSLR camera as we were doing, and there's no need now because of this small little cell phone which we have to actively uh, engage them and teach them how is what is a self-expression, how you want to get portrayed yourself, and how you want to take these, whatever is in your surrounding, how you want to, and that is going to be a next level of teaching them how to use this media without the influence of media, which is coming from all other sources. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to all the panel speakers. Now I would like to request Mr. Shubhendu Bhattacharjee to bind the panel and also give us his observations and comments.
Since time is very short, I don't have I've noted down, but I cannot give each person's very enriching experience that you have shared in front of all of us. Since the topic was for South Asian context, and 600 million children are in there in South Asia, and South Asian children are malnourished. There is high rate of infant mortality, child mortality, maternal mortality, and if you look at the dropouts are more in South Asia. And if you look at Sir was talking about trafficking, child trafficking are more in South Asia. And he has talked about, Professor Shamim Raja has talked about, age of children, 25 years. It's a big debate, and all the world is facing, and there are a lot of issues are coming here. And so major issues of South Asia are migration, conflicts, natural disasters, climate change, everything is impacting all the rights of children. Professor Rabindran has talked about culture in child rights, and once I was talking to him, he said because of the Kabiri, dam, the games of children have changed over a year in the Kabiri Basin region. So they are all, very great resource persons and have enlightened us. Thank you very much for being here. I'm cutting short because of the positives, and thank you so much.
Opening the space for Q&A. He has a question, please. Can we have the mics, please?
A very good morning to everyone present over here. My name is Cmmsofficial-Jamiahamdard, and I largely research on the cognitive and sex workers of Kolkata. My question is related to Om Prakash Mishra, sir. Sir, while doing research concerning the children of female sex workers, I got to notice a few things. One is emotional pain followed by psychological distress amongst the children of female sex workers. And the second thing is, sir, that there is a basic emotion within children that leading the community or disassociating with the community at any cost will lead them to a better future. Most importantly, these children keep a lot of stuff to themselves and they don't share it with the NGOs. Like if I talk about the NGOs, they will think of it as primary education, ration, short trips, farm exercises, and at the same time, there is also a negative image of police amongst the children. So, what do you think should be the appropriate course of action concerning the dominance of NGOs over these communities and the image of police among the children? Thank you so much. Should I respond to this or
We can have the questions all at once, if that's okay. Yeah.
I have a question for Om Prakash Mishra. The death like journal delinquents, criminal crimes are highly problematic because of the colonial and casteist underpinnings behind them. So we should be aware of this basic idea, basic notions behind this bill. And I would like to remind all the persons sitting here about the case of Madura Bay case. I think that this happened in the 1970s, when the Supreme Court judged, the Supreme Court judgment, which means, both ways, academic, administrative judgment, and also we use judgment to we use judge person, a person behind. So in that sense, The Supreme Court's judgment on the victim of the murder case was like a cash colonial. Yes, I have this question. Cash colonialistic and patriarchal and illusion. So the girl was judged as habituated with sexual crimes and potential liar. So I would like to give more importance to this matter. Like we are doing discussions on child rights and schooling and operating the state only as a rescue. So we need to go beyond this framework. So then only we can keep the real justice to this matter.
There is one more in the blue, please, in the center panel.
Good morning, sir. My name is Ankur. My question was related to sir spoke about the children in prostitution, but when we talk about this, the gender of the person sometimes gets assumed. So since you've been in the police service for such a long period of time, do you think that the law enforcement completely not just marginalizes it, neglects transgender kids and the way they live in the transgender culture, and they are finding also child sex workers in these subcultures which gets neglected. So my question is simple. Do you have an experience of encountering trans children sex workers, and do you think that this is neglected by the law enforcement? Thank you.
Please, no more questions. The rest of the questions can happen later on during tea. Please.
First question from the as far as the role of various agencies are concerned, said role of police force, let me tell you, without prejudice, without any adverse to anybody, in the initial rescue operations when they started, we came across such certificates by the medical doctors who certified the age of the victim as major. You know, the victim is actually a minor child. And when she was medically examined to get legal relief from the police or from legal prosecution, they will reduce the certificate. In one case, we had to arrest the doctor also, and we were able to medically establish to another thing. So I have no reservation in saying that. You see, if you go the history of prostitution in India is very old. It's very old. It has continued to it is the form of this whole trade has changed. The form has changed with the advent of changes in society, and earlier it used to be more organized, now it is more in unorganized sectors also. If I say, for example, in Goa, the first spa sector which came to adverse notice, where there was a Thai spa center, and actually it was a spa massage center, they were actually getting into prostitution only. And it was the first case in Goa where we were able to rescue 6, 7, then a lot of changes were brought in the head. So all these stakeholders who are in this particular operation, they definitely understand. The role of police has not been very positive. Really, it has not been very positive. And the change, that's what I'm saying, that the paradigm change when the rescue started taking place and the intervention of High Court was also there, that the victim was the person who was rescued was given an opportunity to present her own case. Earlier it was not the case. If she is constantly in the public place, you arrest her, she goes. You really don't understand, you really don't go into the whole issues, how she has come, why she has come to this particular place. But when the victim was given an opportunity to be a complainant in the prosecution, that made a lot of difference. And that was not a very easy job for a victim. For her, it was actually an economic displacement. I mean, I still remember cases in which
we had to forcibly remove somebody from the premises because they thought that where will we go? What is going to happen? Many of the family members were surviving on the earnings of those victims who were lost in that particular place. We had many, I went to one of the homes in Calcutta also, from where the some of these victims had come and they were actually housed in that. That is why I said that rescue is one dimension of that. More than rescue, if you do not have a meaningful rehabilitative and reintegrative policy, then the chances of getting that woman trafficked and getting to that trap is very high. There are some very good, in fact, NGOs. I know one which are very intense interaction in Hyderabad, Rajola. You know, it's a very, I mean, they had such a system of interaction in which the victim, once we had to hand it over to them, they were there for 15, 20 days in their home. They will not be told what they are going to do. After 15, 20 days, through a very meaningful process, they will be integrated with their families. And let me tell you, they were very conscious of the fact that if they are not given any kind of an employment opportunities, they'll go back. So many of them, they got very good jobs as a vendor in ice cream companies and all those places. Once they become economically independent, then after 2, 3 months of their rescue, their integration with the family in place. So it was not very abrupt for family also to accept them as a member of the children was also very important. So I think I have answered your question. The second question, as far as the transgenders is concerned, uh, transgenders in this rescue operation, we never had any minor victim we come across, but transgenders exposure to their activities was a little different from, in fact, different postings, but definitely that's also area. I mean, that's also a very important, in fact, segment of a society. And when we are talking about these victims, we should definitely take into account their concerns also. I'm sorry, I'm not being able to understand what actually your question is, but both other questions, I hope I answered.
Mike, Mike.
I can add to that. Okay. All that's looking at a different perspective. Like back in 97, 98, I was operating in the Shakya's organization. And I found it very difficult to walk on three issues, very complex, very complicated. They were child prostitution, trafficking, and child labor. Another aspect. To give you one example, we were having some focus group discussions on street children, really level this. We're having good discussions, offering them food, some complaints, and all this thing. After 2 years, one of the program managers of us, he said he met one of the girls in the street. And he was trying to talk to her, and you know, as usual, she's a boy lady. And he could manage to talk to her and say, we're having all this conversation, good things, blah, blah. Even like Children's News Agency, focus group, fine thing. And the big question is, who's going to look after it? I mean, is it your organization? Rehabilitation, going back to family? Now, this actually leads us to another question, how to work with it. That's what was he having. He spoke from his perspective, which is very important that the different techniques and adapted by the traffickers and how to do that. And I think one of the biggest challenges is rehabilitation and cultural acceptance. And unless we accept them culturally, whatever discussions that we have, and whatever the administrative measures and technical measures we take, will not work. Same goes for child labor. We used to work with BD factory, the cigarette factory, the traditional building. Yes.
And they said, what's going to happen? Exactly. Sure. What's going to happen to them? So I think you need separate kind of pedagogy or, the study approach to work on it if you are a researcher. If you are like holistic implementer, that's it. And advocacy is one thing that has to continue as we go this thing, which is a very long-term process. Like, juvenile delinquency, you raised something about it. Let me tell you why. In my initial presentation, while I was talking about subcultures of within the cultures of childhood, I will end just by a very important anecdote that happened in this area only. When I was posted as basically graded class of this area, and parental indifference on how we are concerned our children. Uh, there used to be a lot of stereotypes in this particular area. You don't see the area which is now, which is so congested now, it has grown up. I'm talking about something maybe 50, 20 years back. And it was not that great. And one night, we were able to apprehend 3, 4 juveniles with while they were stealing stereos from very splendid cars. When we came back to the police station, and I started talking. Because for me also it was a very important concern. I wanted to know why such children from affluent families. Let me tell you, one of the child was was son of a very senior bureaucrat. One was the son of a very wealthy businessman. And everyone. When I started talking to them, and I talked to the sister of one of the juvenile, and she said that वो रात में 10 बजे के बाद because they had too many cars in the family, so the cars and the keys of the cars used to be on the at 10 o'clock in the night, they pick up one of the keys, they go and we say that कहाँ जा रहे हैं? तो मैं गुरुद्वारे में जा रहा हूँ और मैं वैसा वाले प्लेस में जा रहा हूँ without questioning that went and he had a group of his own peer group. They would all go in one car. They go and every day they will have new stereos in their cars. So the family was also not going to question that how you have got such a costly stereo. The other day there was another stereo. Today you have got this kind of stereo. So that is the kind of indifference which parents or guardians also have with their children, and it contributes a lot in making them a delinquent person. Let's not forget.
Working on the issues that come in as part of the program for last 25 years is corporate activism. So also for future plans of the share. Here, what is wrong of most important was the parents have to equal role to play for the children of the child. Thank you very much.
All the discussions over tea now. Let's break for tea. We shall reconvene at 12 for the parallel sessions. Please, the volunteers, I'm requesting you to take charge. Carry all the participants. Please don't carry them physically. Please take them along.
नहीं कुछ नहीं सर सर इसका क्या होगा ये कहाँ ये तो बोल रहे थे कि आ रहे हैं तक नहीं आया ठीक है उसको ये किसने बताया उसके आदमी ने कर उसको बताया नहीं वो देखा नहीं उसका अंदर लिखा हुआ है नो बट आई एम सेइंग दैट हु टोल्ड हु गेव हिम दिस डिसीजन कि